Darshan Dedia has now called in from Hyderabad. Darshan, how can we help you?
Good evening, Kavita and Mudassir. My query is pertaining to investment options in Hyderabad. I'm contemplating between a residential property that is Prestige Ivy League 3 BHK, which is 1.2 crore. I think the position will be in 2019 January. And the other option is a commercial project, Purvankara Summit. It's again 1,200 square feet of undivided share in a grade A office. Now, both of these projects are bank approved, and I'm looking at both of these options from an investment perspective. So I would like to get your opinion on that. Thank you.
Okay, from an investment perspective, should he go for residential or commercial property in Hyderabad at the moment? What would you recommend, Mudassir?
Between the two, see, both developers are good. Prestige is a graded developer. Purvankara is a graded developer as well. However, between commercial and residential, at the moment, I would prefer commercial. In the last couple of years, commercial has had a good run, decent run, in terms of leasing levels as well as in terms of appreciation levels. I expect that to continue. The business confidence is strong. We are hoping that the leasing levels in the market will continue to be strong in the future as well, which will basically support developers who are building commercial projects. My sense is, if it's just for us, for the sake of investments, my opinion is that you should look at commercial. One is your yield on the property would be much higher. One is you would get obviously loans at whatever rate that you're getting, 9-10% levels. This will end up giving you at least about an 8+% yield on the property, which will basically, so whatever capital appreciation that you will eventually manage out of it after holding out for a few years, you would be able to make a far better return. For the residential property to really make a decent amount of returns, you need, the rental capacity of a rental yield on a residential property is hardly anything. It's about 1 to 1.5% to about 2.5%. So one has to really look at capital appreciation to really make any returns on a residential property, which in the next couple of years will really be muted. So at the moment, if it's at the the option is between commercial and residential, and it's only for investment, then commercial definitely will be far more preferred. However, the one thing that I would obviously look at, advise looking at closely is the undivided share in that. It's about 1,200 odd square feet that you're looking at. Undivided would means that it is virtual space, and therefore Purvankara will possibly manage the entire leasing process for you. To a larger client, to a large, they will combine these holdings and lease it out. So that needs to be looked at on what these terms are. So look at that carefully, and if the terms are decent, then hopefully it should give you far better returns than a residential property in the next 2 to 3 years.
I was just going to ask you that question, the undivided share. Now, you said look at what the terms are, if these terms are reasonable. Now, what are reasonable terms in these things? Because, it's not very often that retail investors actually choose to invest in commercial property, in A-grade commercial space. So, what is it that Darshan should be looking out for?
Retail investors will largely get these opportunities only in a virtual manner, especially because in cities like Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai, which are largely driven by IT sector and not by commercial sector per se, the leasing out, the deals for leasing out, the transaction sizes are far larger. And therefore 1,200, 1,500, 2,000 square feet don't really make any sense if you hold it separately. In a city like Mumbai or in Delhi, where there are other sectors, like for example, smaller offices that consultancy, for example, can take, or other financial sector, etc., which can hold these smaller offices, or lawyers or CAs, etc., who don't want very, very large spaces. Those can actually make decent use of this. But in the area that Purvankara is building this, which is High Tech City 2, there's largely going to be IT space. So one can really partake in these opportunities only if one goes for virtual spaces. Now, looking at that limitation in mind, what best that one can look at when investing in these? There are obviously the overall leasing will be handled by the developer, but one needs to look at the terms and conditions. There should be some say in the overall thing with the investor per se. And so what if they're not able to lease it for some time? Do they get any compensation? So, for example, a lot of developers promise some kind of a return on it, even if they're not able to lease it out for quite some time. So, whether those returns are reasonable or not, or for that matter, if it if it gets leased out and then gets, for example, vacated early, then what happens? So, all those terms have to be looked at. They have to be practical and reasonable, and should take care of a retail investor. Should not be that. It should not be what for example, a large developer with larger clout and ability to use the legal system, etc., should not bulldoze smaller retail investors with the terms and conditions.
Exactly.
So that's all. I mean, it has to be practical, reasonable. This is the only way that retail guys can look into it.
Right. So, Darshan, essentially, you need to read through that agreement very, very closely before you sign on the dotted line. Very important things that you need to remember, since it is undivided share, which we assume means that Purvankara will be leasing out that particular space. You will need to check with them as to what happens. Like Mudassir just said, what happens if the property is not leased out for a particular point in time, or if the tenant walks out before the lease is complete. So you need to check out on all of that. You need to ensure that your returns are taken care of, your returns from that particular property, the rentals that you're supposed to be receiving, those are safeguarded, and only then you should actually go ahead and sign. I would like to take this one step further and tell you that this is probably the kind of deal that for which you should call in a professional. It's best if you get a property consultant to actually look at those papers and then go ahead and sign on the dotted line.
You can watch live TV on our website mpnow.in. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/magicbricksnow. And don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at magicbricksnow. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/magicbricksnow.